All right, everyone. Hillary Clinton has a lot on her plate. Of course, her book sales were like a failure, basically. It's like she shouldn't have even written her memoir. Then she's got various, you've got Uranium One, you've got Fusion GPS, you've got all the various scandals that either involve her campaign, or people associated with her candidacy. Now there's a new one. The new complaint that was filed with the Federal Elections Commission alleges that essentially big-time donors. Now, of course, individuals, there's a cap on the donations they can give to a campaign. You can work through like a super PAC or something. That's a way to skirt, election funding laws. But generally speaking, if you want to work, if it's going directly to the campaign, there's a hard cap on how much you can give. The allegation is that thus the Clinton campaign, the Hillary Victory Fund, solicited much larger donations, because there is no hard cap on giving it to local state sort of election offices like for the Democratic or Republican or whatever party. You can donate more money to them. So essentially that Seth MacFarlane and Calvin Klein and some of these other major donors, that an attempt was made to get them to give these much larger amounts to local offices, with the understanding that the majority of that goes to the Clinton Fund. Which, if this happened and was systemic, that would definitely explain some of the money problems that on their state election side, and why they get sort of wiped out in state legislatures. Yeah, there'd be a big problem. It would be more evidence that Hillary Clinton is basically like cancer to the Democratic Party. Like really, really screwed them up. Again, all you have to do is take a look at what the Democratic Party in general is saying during the actual election itself. They're like, well, Trump's like the worst candidate ever. The Republicans are like fighting each other, and yet they still managed to lose basically everything. There weren't a whole lot of victories in 2016 for the Democrats to actually write home about. They had lost power in state legislatures. They lost a shit ton of governor's seats, and then they lost the presidency in an astonishing upset, according to them. Like, you look at the polls, and some people knew better, but most of them expected Clinton to win, probably quite handily. They didn't expect that they were going to lose, half a dozen states that they were counting on winning, because Nate Silver kept telling him how wonderful and how great their campaign strategy was. Obviously, that was not actually the case. So now it looks like they were like openly embezzling money, and this isn't just like, well, Clinton's lining her pockets because she knows the gig is up, and she's old, or giving Chelsea's wedding cost more than she expected. She needs to cover that fucking cost. It wasn't that. It was the Clinton election machine wanted more fuel, despite the fact that it was already getting massive sums of money from enormous donors anyway. Like all the super PAC money raised was enormous. Like, it was like 10 to 1. I think I saw one Trump ad during the whole election, one or two Trump ads. I saw Clinton ads over and over and over again. Now, keep in mind, other than the fact that we roll over with New Hampshire, this isn't a particularly competitive area. And she already had Bernie Sanders gunning on her side for New Hampshire, which means it was almost a foregone conclusion she was going to win. I was surprised it was as close as it was. I expected her to go beyond that, at least in New Hampshire. I didn't really count on that being a necessarily Trump-friendly state. You would have had to have dragged Rand in at that point for the libertarian bloc there, and I don't think it would have worked. Although maybe because it was so close. That would have been really funny if he had flipped New Hampshire. But Clinton, her campaign, apparently, she kept complaining. Like, there are emails. She was complaining about the DNC, and she comes out and says, well, they didn't raise enough money for me. Once I was the nominee, they basically abandoned me. Yeah, of course, but you had like $1 billion in corporate donations alone fed into your campaign. What the hell did you do with all this money? How did you even manage to spend it all? Meanwhile, I can remember for a brief moment there, when they were talking about Trump's campaign being anemic, closed some offices and laid some people off. He's basically admitting defeat. Oh man, I thought that was so funny. It was great. And then, meanwhile, Trump came out and screwed with their heads and said, well, yeah, I'm running a lean machine here, basically. This is what we need in the country at large. That's a good selling point, actually, in some parts of the country, I'm sure. Probably flip some people's votes. Hillary Clinton, meanwhile, is talking about multi-million-dollar sums of money being improperly solicited. Now, they have to pay that money back if it's found that they actually did that. They'll have to give that money back. They'll have to pay restitution. Only I don't think that Hillary Clinton has anymore a fundraising apparatus capable of doing so. Is this going to break a couple of Democratic machines? That would be funny. Be real funny. Of course, you remember, I think it was about 2 months ago, the state offices in Vermont, the Democratic Party here was talking about, oh yeah, we're broke. We need to solicit more donations. Like, people just aren't giving us money anymore. I wonder why. It's because you've got corporate money. You don't need little people's donations anymore. No, you'll have to make do with the billionaire bankers and see what they can spare. When you don't have a party leader, a clear future candidate, control of any significant legislative capabilities, or basically anything else, who's going to fund you? Yeah, they're going to have to pay double just to get you back up to working standards, because your money-heavy campaign strategies, obviously, that you adapted from the Bush Republicans, they've stopped working. Right as you sort of got the hang of sucking off corporations and going and bowing before banksters and sheiks over in oil states, right around the time that the Democrats started out Republicaning the Republicans get Trump, switch strategies, it works, and the old way of campaigning dies. So I'm not surprised that the Hillary Clinton campaign had money problems despite its massive fundraising, because it couldn't get enough traction to actually make do with the fact that it had to go up against someone who was taking advantage of social media and paid very, very little for the bulk of his advertising. Now they're left basically holding a dud because that old campaign strategy no longer works. Now they have to pay that money back potentially. And they'll probably get found guilty. Look, they'll drag it out because they're hoping that people have forgotten all about the election. And then the media will help Clinton out and bury it on page 2 so she doesn't look more corrupt than she already does. Which, to the average person, they understand she is, but some people, they haven't come around to that yet. I think that this would break some of their cognitive dissonances. They'd have to be really, really out. They'd have to be a total partisan, and they'd have to be like, yeah, but Trump is Hitler, so, Clinton can do whatever she wants, and it's okay. She can strangle orphans, and it's not as bad as what Trump does, because he says stuff about Haiti, supposedly. Talking about that later. You'd have to be really, really out there at that point not to understand how corrupt not just Hillary Clinton is, not just her family or her inner circle, like the Podestas and stuff, but literally the entire campaign apparatus from top to bottom, with the exception of whoever was leaking their material so that people could be aware of all the other corruption that they were trying to cover up. Really, it's a very, very thin membrane hiding an enormous ball of composting human waste. That's about what the Clintons are like. That's about all. Peace out.